Imagine standing on the wind-swept heights of the Carpathian Mountains, where mist clings to ancient fortresses and the scent of pine mixes with centuries of legend. Below you lies a land once ruled by the Dacians, an indomitable people whose name echoes through the corridors of history but whose story has often been silenced by the roar of empires. Conquered by Rome nearly 2,000 years ago, the Dacians were long thought to have melted into the great mosaic of the Roman world, their language lost and their tribes scattered. But recent breakthroughs in genetics are rewriting this narrative and revealing a hidden truth: the Dacians never truly vanished. Their legacy flows in the blood of millions of modern Europeans, binding past to present in an unbroken chain of inherited DNA. From the earliest days of archaeology, urns and spearheads left by Dacian hands bore witness to a sophisticated culture: warriors who defied mighty Rome, craftsmen who carved spirals and geometric designs into gold, and priests who performed rituals beneath the vaulted sky. Yet artifacts tell only part of the story. They speak in symbols, not in the language of flesh and bone. To hear the true song of the Dacians, scientists needed to listen at the molecular level. In laboratories across Europe, researchers have turned to ancient remains, teeth, bone fragments, and burial offerings buried in cool earth for generations. By extracting and sequencing tiny fragments of DNA, they have peered into the genetic code of men and women who lived and died before the Christian era. What emerged was astonishing. The genetic signatures of these ancient Dacians appear today in populations across Romania, Moldova, and beyond into Hungary, Bulgaria, and even the far reaches of Ukraine. One landmark study compared the genomes of medieval skeletons from Dacian cemeteries with those of modern inhabitants of Transylvania. It found that key mitochondrial lineages passed from mother to child remain remarkably consistent, suggesting a direct maternal line linking the present to the past. Even more striking, Y chromosome markers traces of unbroken male ancestry revealed a high frequency of haplogroups associated with ancient Dacian tribes in today's Carpathian Highlanders. In other words, the blood of Decebalus's warriors still flows through local veins, carried down unbroken through countless generations. But the influence of the Dacians extends far beyond the highlands. Genetic analyses across Eastern Europe show subtle but significant traces of Dacian ancestry in populations hundreds of kilometers from their historic homeland. In Hungary's Shikli communities, for example, researchers discovered a unique genetic cluster that aligns more closely with ancient Dacian sequences than with surrounding Magyar or Slavic groups. Likewise, in Bulgaria's Rhodope Mountains, isolated villages harbor mitochondrial lineages closely matching those unearthed in Roman-era Dacian burials, each finding chips away at the notion that the Dacians disappeared. Instead, it paints a picture of persistence of people who retained cultural identity even under Roman rule, and whose descendants carried those genes into the modern age. These genetic revelations also challenge assumptions about migration and assimilation. The Roman conquest of Dacia did bring Roman settlers, soldiers, and administrators, and Latin gradually infused local speech. Over centuries, that Latin heritage evolved into Romanian, the Romance language of the Balkans. Yet DNA tells a parallel story. While the Dacians adopted new customs and tongues, they did not vanish. Their daughters married Roman soldiers, their sons became legionaries, but the fundamental molecules of their being endured, woven into the very fabric of emerging medieval kingdoms. Today, as genomics technology grows ever more precise, scientists can even estimate when these genetic exchanges took place. By analyzing patterns of shared DNA segments, they trace pulses of admixture times when Dacian women married Roman settlers, or when migrating Slavic tribes intermingled with local populations. These genetic mosaics reveal a timeline, a surge of Roman admixture in the 2nd and 3rd centuries AD, followed by waves of Slavic and Hungarian gene flow in the early Middle Ages, and then relative genetic stability from the 12th century onward. Yet, throughout all these changes, the Dacian component remains a constant thread, an ancestral echo that resurfaces in every generation. What does this mean for modern Europeans? First, it reframes national narratives built on the notion of abrupt cultural breaks. Rather than viewing the Roman conquest as the end of the Dacians, we can see it as the beginning of a new chapter in which Dacian blood and culture fused with those of newcomers, creating the rich tapestry we know today. Second, it restores the Dacians to their rightful place as enduring contributors to European heritage and indigenous population whose genetic legacy survives and the people who still call these mountains home. In our age of globalization, where identities are ever fluid, the story of the Dacians offers both continuity and connection. It reminds us that beneath the layers of history underneath the empires, languages, and borders lie the unbroken chains of ancestry that shape who we are. When you walk through a modern Romanian village or hear the lilting accent of a Moldovan farmer, you are hearing more than a dialect of Latin, you are hearing the distant echo of Dacian speech, centuries old. When you grasp the hand of a friend in Bulgaria or Slovakia, you are holding a legacy that stretches back to iron-walled fortresses and hidden mountain shrines. As science continues to map the human genome, our understanding of the past will only deepen. Future studies may uncover even more threads connecting us to the Dacians, genetic links to ancient Illyrians or Thracians, traces of lost Dacian dialects in modern Romanian, or biomarkers associated with traditional Dacian agricultural practices. Each discovery will enrich our sense of human continuity, demonstrating that the people who built those mountaintop sanctuaries live on, not just in stone and myth, but in the very cells of their descendants. So, the next time you explore a Roman ruin or read about Decebalus's last stand, remember that the story did not end there. It lives on in your own DNA, whispering through generations, waiting to be heard. The Dacians may have faded from the pages of ancient historians, but they never truly disappeared. They remain with us immortal not in grand architecture, but in the most intimate architecture of all, the double helix within every living cell.